Hi. Hi everyone, I'm Sebastien, I'm from Ledger. I feel very lucky and blessed to be here and to close this conference. I'm relatively new to the space because I've been at Ledger for 2 months now. And yeah, right? But I came in here and I've met so many amazing people. I learned a lot of things and I'm coming back. I'll be back going back to Paris tomorrow with a lot of new ideas and concepts. But there's one thing that when I arrived, I was already thinking about, and that is clear to me now, is that we're really building a whole new infrastructure together. All the people in this room, all the people in this conference, and I think that's really something to celebrate. But before talking about that new infrastructure, I wanted to take a step back in time to 1961. This is a little platform in Dartford in the UK. And one morning in October, there was an 18-year-old kid, teenager, standing on that platform, and he was carrying blues records under his arm. There was another teenager on that platform who was 17, and he was carrying a guitar on his back. And they started talking because they were signaling to each other. The guy with the guitar knew what those records were. Back in the day, the record industry was $1 billion industry. It was tiny, right? And it was dominated by jazz. Blues records were probably like 1% of that. So if you had a blues record at that time, you were really special. So that signal was the beginning of a partnership between these two guys, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. This is actually photoshopped into the platform. That's not an actual picture. But the record industry became a $20+ billion industry, and they sold 240 million records. And so, if you fast forward from 1961 to 30 years after, 1991, the teenager in that picture is 17 years old. He's nowhere as famous or gifted as Mick and Keith, but it was me, right? And I was also signaling to others, to my friends, that I was cool or thought I was cool by buying records. What had changed was the form factor. I wasn't buying vinyl, I was buying CDs, but essentially I was saying the same thing, right? And if you fast forward another 30 years to 2021, that kid is my son, who's also 17, and he owns no records. Actually, he owns one. He owns Sgt. Pepper's. It's a mint edition. I bought it for him on his birthday. I don't think he ever played it. He knows the record because he listens to it on Spotify, but he's never actually played the record. And so he owns no records because all of these teenagers have all of the world's music in their pocket on their phone, so there's no way for you to signal anymore. I mean, even with a playlist on Spotify, you don't do that. On the other hand, he does own a bunch of Fortnite skins and swords, and that's his way to signal to his space, right? And the money that I used to spend buying CDs, he's spending it buying skins on Fortnite. And so an ultra-rare skin on Fortnite is the equivalent of having that super cool bootleg record of your favorite band that you would have back in the 90s, right? It's signaling. So why am I telling you these stories? Well, not just to show pictures of me when I was a teenager or talk about my son, but also because I think that all of you guys are today's blues record buyers, right? So Mick and Keith in 1961, they were ahead of their time by buying blues records, and all of the people in this audience, all of the people at this conference are ahead of our time. And that's amazing. And I think, and I really believe, and I hope that there'll be as many as possible, that some of the people in this room will become tomorrow's Rolling Stones or the equivalent of the Rolling Stones of Web3. So what I find really, really interesting also is the fact that, the key to what's happening is about ownership. It's about contract. I love what's happening in communities and in creativity, everything that we've seen on the stage these past few days. But what I find even more interesting is everything that's happening around utility, right? What's important is that how this is going to fundamentally change ownership. And you're seeing it, and I wanted to take 3 quick examples, one in the art world. Obviously, the art world is incredibly disrupted by NFTs, right? The NFT landscape is already bigger than the overall art world, right? It's over $40 billion, and the art world is less than that. And what's interesting is that the art world is very opaque, right? So it's the opposite of the NFT space, which is totally transparent. But they really care about provenance. They really care about ownership. They also care a lot about authenticity and scarcity. And those four things, provenance, ownership, scarcity, and authenticity, are totally key to the NFT ecosystem as well. So there's really a correlation between the two. And we are seeing some people who are maybe thinking a little bit outside of the box. I want to take the example of the Hermitage in Vienna, which owns this beautiful Klimt called the Kiss. And on February 14th this year, like Valentine's Day, they auctioned off 10,000 NFTs, which represented each a little bit of the artwork for 0.65 ETH. They sold about 1/4 of the 10,000, but that's still $4 million that they raised. And it's just a way, and yesterday I was having a conversation about this with someone who's in the art world, and she told me, I will quote her, she said, maybe this will become like the new evolved gift shop, right? Like you'll come out of like a museum and you'll be able to buy an NFT of your favorite piece of art. But if you really love art, I think it makes sense that you want to own, you'll never be, I mean, very few people will be able to actually own one of these paintings. You saw that a Warhol, was sold for 200 million a couple of weeks ago. But owning a tiny piece of it might be a way for you to link to that art, link to that emotion. Gaming has always been obviously a sector that's been ahead of its time. And it's been disrupted already by Fortnite in 2018. For the first time having a free-to-play game, which is a AAA title, available on every single platform. And where, and which is able to actually build like $5 billion worth of, revenue just from selling those skins I was talking about earlier. But outside of Fortnite, what we're seeing right now, and there were a lot of talks this morning really interesting about blockchain games, is this, and I took the example of Zed Run because I think it's interesting to see that there's a passion around horse racing, and this is like a new way to do horse racing, including a little spin on technology and on ownership. The games are still very basic. I think we're only at the beginning, but the idea of like creating a new economy around gaming and around Web3, I find will be the beginning of a new disruption. And then the third one, to kind of like go full circle for what I was talking about with the Rolling Stones earlier, obviously is music. Music is the sector that was the most disrupted by Web 1, right? Like the music industry almost died at the ends of Napster in the beginning of the 2000s. It resurrected miraculously thanks to streaming platform, but the reality is that that's true for the industry, but is it really true for artists, right? You know that like only 0.2% of Spotify artists make more than $50,000 a year. 0.2% make more than 50, and it is 50,000, right? If you have 5 people in the band, it's 10,000 apiece. So, and then the other incredible stat is that out of all the money that's being made on streaming platform, only 16% of that money goes to the artists. All of it goes to record companies. Record companies take 84% of it, artists get only 16. So the example I want to take is the one of Deadmau5. I mean, he's got a leg up on a lot of artists because he doesn't have a recording contract, so all his IP is his. But he's been able to create all these different NFT drops. His last single was an NFT that you could buy for about $2, and he's raised over $4 million just with NFTs. And one of the things that he's doing also which I find very interesting, is that he's trying to revolutionize the ticketing industry, because this is another place where if you're an artist, yeah, when you sell tickets, you make money off of them. I mean, you obviously get a bunch of people taking a cut. But the secondary market, which sometimes can go crazy, you get no money from, right? But if you turn your tickets into NFTs and you bake in royalties in there, then artists, if their tickets sell for $1,000, then they can make money off of that. So I think that's super interesting. And so the core of these 3 examples is that there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of new ideas, there's a lot of new business models that are being created, and this idea that, there's going to be more and more utility for everything that's being built on Web3. And as utility grows, usage is going to grow, right? Maybe there's only a few million people buying NFTs today, but down the line there'll be hundreds of millions because there will be more utility linked to them. But once you have more digital assets, you need to be more careful about them. You have to create more security, which is where Ledger comes in, obviously. And really, it's at the heart of everything that we do. And one analogy that I always think about is that if somebody steals $3,000 from you, you're going to get pretty pissed off, right? You're going to get pretty angry. But if somebody steals an artwork from your house, which is also worth $3,000, but which used to belong to like your grandmother, the emotional attachment to it makes it much, much more valuable. And I think that the emotional attachment that people have to their NFTs, also the fact that a lot of times it links them to a community, makes it much more important to protect. And so, and tomorrow, it's not just going to be coins or artworks. It's going to be all of your personal identity. And so the need to secure that is going to be paramount. So that's why we're here. We're the world's most secure platform in a borderless world. And I think that we all have a role to play here, because the more we secure our industry, the more people will come to it. So I'll leave you with that. You guys have a great evening tonight at the Sandbox Party, and I hope to see you at Ledger Open in New York in June. Bye.